Our nursery worker is on her way. When you go downstairs, just want to say, I ripped into some things. Sorry about that, but there is a path where you can get through. I mean, we built some shelves out today. Vern and I are just, put them in there for organizing in the basement, and we found all kinds of hidden things under the stairwell. It was a bunch of junk. So we just started pulling it out, and then I had to run and go do some things, and came back. So I'll finish it, but just be careful when you go down through, because it's like a little bit of a maze right now. Just old stuff down there. So we, of course, had a snowstorm, and then we had open heavens, and so we're just starting up again. A lot of you came out for open heaven services, and it was awesome. But what's coming is this coming week on Wednesday night, Kira is going to be, she did her part 1 of teaching, and then she's going to do part 2 of what she was teaching this coming week. Then after that, we're going to start just a small series on trauma bonding. And so I'll put these flyers out so you can remind yourself that that's what will be going on here on Wednesday nights. So just to explain what trauma bonding is, and sometimes it has to do with if a person wanted to groom you to get you to do something, they'd trauma bond you by giving you stuff, and you go, oh my gosh, they really like me. And then taking something away by being critical to you or shunning you or doing something like that. And then as soon as you go to draw the boundary that says, I'm not putting up with this, I'm not taking this, all of a sudden they come back just so much love. So they give something, they take it away, they give something, they take it away. And after a while, you feel like you're the crazy one. Because think of all the kind things they've done. At the same time, think of all the things they've done to control you. So that's part of trauma bonding. Another thing can be that family members may have gone through some things in life that were very traumatic. Someone passed away in the family. There was a car accident, something like that. And then we stop bonding normal as a family. If there isn't help that gets in the middle of that, we bond through the trauma rather than bonding just a normal way. Hey, you're my sister or whatever. And growing up that way, it's more about the trauma, and the trauma stays in the middle of everything. And so that as people grow to be adults, many times that's hard for them to, even hang out with each other, because you might move all different directions, but when you come back to the family base, it's like, oh, there's that thing in the middle of us that we never really did resolve. Never really had that resolve. I had one lady years ago tell me that that's how her family was, and just listening to her story, part of her story was that her little brother, I think he was 2, got run over by the milk truck in their yard. Right, they were like dairy farmers, and he died instantly. And she said she remembered herself being under like a bed. When they came to find her, she was hidden underneath there just crying or whatever. But when they pulled her out, nobody talked about it. Nobody worked through it. Nobody, any of those things. They were all bonded to each other, but they were bonded through the trauma. And what that did is it left them enabled to communicate, because they never went through the skill that it would take to heal that. So we're going to talk about many different ways that people trauma bond. And so what happens is, let's say you move away from all that, and you're like, I'm starting a new life, and you get around somebody who triggers that, you will automatically go into the role that you played, right? And usually that's the victim, or usually that's the I have to serve you, or I guess I got to give you what you want, and it'll be an automatic thing. So I can see by faces that you're like, yeah, I've been through that. So and sometimes you may find out, hey, I'm the one who caused the trauma, and now I don't know how to get back to regular bonding with my family, with my girlfriend, my boyfriend, whoever it is. Now that I'm healed of the trauma, I should be able to do that, and I don't know how. So that's a big one too. So that's what we'll be talking about. So please take some of these flyers and invite friends and neighbors and peeps. So I'm going to talk about Proverbs tonight a little bit, and I'm going to talk about perfectionism a little bit. How many of you would consider yourself a perfectionist in any area? Now, here's what's crazy. You can be a perfectionist on how you change the oil in your car, but can't keep a room clean. You can be a perfectionist in how you keep your tools lined up in your garage, but you can't ever find your shoes, and your socks are never matched, and you don't care. But there's these areas. But and so those can be things that are over exaggerated that, maybe it's just a personal preference, but then it can go through a line where it becomes, where almost like it controls you. And so we'll talk a little bit about that tonight. But I want to read this scripture first. Proverbs 10, verse 17. He who learns from instruction and correction is on the right path of life, and for others his example is a path toward wisdom and blessing. But he who ignores and refuses correction goes off course, and for others his example is a path towards sin and ruin. So when we look at, of course, we want to lean toward instruction and correction. There's a difference between instruction, though, right? When we put those shelves together, we laid all the pieces out, and there seemed to be like a gazillion screws, and we're like, really? Doesn't look like you need that many. Maybe they give you extra, whatever. But sure enough, we used them all. But part of it that made it make sense is that I opened up the instructions. And it was like, oh, yeah, we need that many, and this is how it lays out. And there's a comfort in that instruction where you go, I have the knowledge base that I know what I'm doing now because I can follow this picture or whatever it is. So instruction is one thing. Correction, though, many times to correct something, you've already been instructed on how it's supposed to go, and it didn't go that way, so then a correction follows, right? Like the old typewriters, some of you are as old as me, those old stiff typewriters, and then they had that little white tab that you would, the correcto paper or whatever it's called, you'd put there and you'd type it again and it would leave a white mark so you could see all your errors, but that was, a clean page, right? You did a great job. Where now you can just put autocorrect on spelling, and I'm that person who doesn't trust that, so I have to still look it up anyway. Sometimes I'm like, no, I think I spelled it right. And sure enough, they're right most of the time. But I still have to look. I'm like, I don't know, I don't think so, especially if I'm writing something to a lawyer or something like that. I'm like, I think I spelled it right. But there's a difference between instruction and correction. But it says, he who learns from instruction and correction is on the right path of life. So you're literally, it puts you on the right path of life. Isn't that interesting? That, of course, the best instruction comes from the Word of God, because God is love. And that's the path we want to be on. So to get instruction, though, we have to have our ports open. And we've talked about many times here that trauma, for instance, will either exaggerate your ports where your hearing is like, stop yelling at me, and the person's not even yelling. Or trauma will cause that to be closed down and you can't hear when you need to hear. You see things that are there that aren't there, right? You're not self-aware. Some of those things that happens through trauma. And when we experience that type of stuff, it is hard then for us sometimes to listen to instruction. Wouldn't you agree? That if your ports are lit up really hot, it's hard to read something and have it make sense. You ever do that where I'm going to just read this paragraph and it sounds like, and you're like, what am I even... Because usually your mind is very revved up at that point and it's not making sense. So to get to safety and to get on the right path of life, we got to be open to instruction and correction. But a lot of times our trauma is built around that. Instruction and correction was yelled at you, right? Let me tell you how to do that, right? So there's a nervousness which shuts down learning. And then you end up getting corrected because you didn't do it right while you were too nervous to be instructed, right? So if you look at this is a great scripture. This is absolute wisdom. This comes from the book they call the wisdom book, which is Proverbs. Wisdom shows you, the effects of the past to the now, to your future. And basically it's saying you get in the learning, instructing, and correction area, and you yield to that, you're going to be right on the right path. You do the opposite, not a good path that you want to be on. Okay, so that's great. We should just be able to tell everybody that, well, get on that path. But when you add trauma to it, it's difficult then to learn. It's difficult then to hear correctly. It's difficult then to just go, I totally understood what you said. This is how I'm supposed to go do this and be instructed in it. And it makes it really difficult and high anxiety if you're thinking about being corrected. How many of you like being corrected? I tend to, if I really know that I don't have the instructions down on something, I'll ask for the correction before I do that. Right, like I'm trying to put, like they had these braces, because this shelf we bought apparently is like the shelf of all times. I mean, we knew it was heavy and we lifted it, but I didn't pay attention. Like it's supposed to hold 2,000 pounds on this thing. And I'm like, we're just going to put some tubs on it and with colors and stuff in it. But as we're putting it together, you got to have the slats that go across, and that's going to brace it a certain way or whatever. And so you could flip them this way. Could get it on there that way, but it's actually supposed to go this way. And so as my husband's on that end, I'm like, correct me if I'm wrong. See, I asked for correction. Is it supposed to go this way or that way? Because I thought the instructions said this. And he goes, oh, no, you got it right. So in order to head off anxiety or head off any of that so it's a relaxed situation, if I know somebody knows something already that I don't know or they got a better handle on it, I will ask for that. Correct me if I'm wrong. This is what I'm thinking's right. Go ahead and correct me. But if there's high anxiety and we're feeling this, just like, oh my gosh, I'm going to get corrected, we will not ask for the instruction at a deeper level. We just won't. You ever avoid something totally showing up at your boss's office or something like that? Some people just leave a job. The boss says, oh, can we talk in the morning? And you're like, yeah, I'm not coming back to this job. He could be giving you a raise, but you don't know. But you're not going to take that chance. I've actually had people tell me, I just walked out. I'm like, why? I just can't handle that. I know already I'm going to be in trouble. You don't know that. And the thing is, if the guys, or the woman who's the boss is all crabby and, trash talking and whatever, you do have the right to get up and leave. You do have some power. But if you see yourself powerless, you'll quit your job totally just so you don't have to go to that one meeting. It can do that. And that's how avoiding the instruction and the correction will get you on. It goes off course, is how the Amplified says it. And for others, it is an example of a path towards sin and ruin. Because once you get that sensation, you'll start talking trash about yourself and probably will never get a decent job. I'm always getting corrected about everything. You ever been in that spot? And it's all of a sudden you turn on yourself. And it's like, the dude just asked to meet with you. That's all. Calm down, soldier. It's going to be okay. And if they're an abusive person or whatever, you have the right to stand up and you're like, you know what? I don't need to listen to this. I'm sorry you feel that way. I would love to talk to you about it, but you're not in a good frame of mind. Walk out the door. Right? Many times we don't have that skill, though, because no one instructed us that. The things that come to our mind is, yeah, I'll tell them a thing or two. And then we get abusive back to the abuser. And now we got co-abuse going on, and we feel like, well, I just had to do that to protect myself. Well, you could have done 100 other things to protect yourself. But the only thing we think of is the thing that they're doing to us we'll do back to them and harder, and that way maybe they'll learn a lesson, and they never do. Right? So it's a very powerful feeling. I've been in those spots where, I've had counseling come in. This was years ago. I had a counseling come in. And just the way they were talking to it, I said, are you sure you're ready to talk about what's going on? I'm ready. I don't have a problem. What are you saying? I have a problem? I don't think you're ready. Therefore, we're not going to continue this. It's a very powerful feeling. You just open the door and you go, come back on Tuesday. Right? That gives that person an option to either calm themselves down or what. No, we can talk. I'm sorry. All right, but it can't continue like this. I don't roll like this. We're not going to do this. It's not healthy for you or for me. See how just that conversation changes everything around? But that's not how we were corrected. So I just want to hear some times that you can remember that maybe was a correction that left a mark on your life that was negative. Can you remember being corrected? See, I always go for the negative first because your brain will actually pull that up quicker than it will the positive. Can you think of a time? That was, yeah.
Keep the cows clean, and then you never could because they were alcoholics and really abusive with each other. So it was either like, there's some drywall on the floor and like beer cans everywhere.
Yeah.
And then you get in trouble for it.
But when they're mad about it and they trip over something, it was you that you're responsible for all that. Yeah,
So
that's
that
not cool.
turns into me like always keeping something clean, and then I feel like if I'm not, it's double the trauma.
Yeah. So do you ever have it, just to kind of clarify, just, alcoholic parents, places trash, drywall, beer cans laying around or whatever, but as a kid, you get corrected when they're drunk or they trip over something or whatever, and it's like, why didn't you keep this clean? That's a correction. It's an inappropriate one. Doesn't even fit. They're not owning any of their behaviors, and they're projecting everything onto you. So now as an adult, hey, I can live in my own place. I can clean my room if I want to or whatever. You may find, and correct me if I'm wrong, that what'll happen is you'll have days where it's like everything's got to be perfect. And then other days you're just like, whatever, just let it all fall apart. I cannot keep up with this. That ever happen to you? Yeah, anybody else identify with that? Because it's such an intense abuse that you'll try to conform to it. It's part of trauma bonding, right? You're bonded to that correction, and you don't want that to happen again. And so then you'll finally prove that if you're in your own place, by golly, it's going to be just something. And then you wash every detail and everything, and then you're just exhausted because it's not reality. There's a place of it, it's like, no, you actually live here. There's going to be a dirty sock eventually or whatever it is. And then it'll just feel like, I can't keep this up because it's too high of a goal. And then it'll just go to too low a goal. And when it goes to the low, that's when you beat yourself up, right? Because they're not there to beat you up. Somebody's got to beat you up. So why not you? Right? Or it's the dog's fault or whatever, and then you'll have to be careful that you don't project that onto your daughter, and the cycle continues. Right? Give me another one it's a correction, but an inappropriate one.
Way back when I was a teenager learning to drive, I made it like a half a block with my mom, and she was screaming at me, and I think I don't know if I had both feet on the pedal. I had one on the brake. But it's like your first time out in the road, and the way she handled that, I put the car in park, and I opened the door, and I got out and walked home. And I'm almost 48 years old, and I'm still like getting over that, because it's like every correction I just feel like. And she said to me once, when something bad happened, I don't remember what, it was after I got a divorce, and I was having a hard time. She said, I don't know one with such bad luck. And she's like, I just wish sometime you could call with some good news. It's just always, something's always wrong. So then I just was like, okay, well then I'm not going to call her at all, because I never have, it felt like I never had anything good enough to say to her.
Yeah.
So,
So she didn't have the skill to focus on you and not the problem. So you say going through a divorce, the first response should be, are you okay? Instead, she responded to the divorce. What else? What else is going on? Right? That sounds like all trouble, but if we dug into her life program and her program in her head, she probably has something in her background that would be more of, you should be able to control all this, or something like that, that now she feels like a failure if you bring something up that you're going through, that somehow all of this is another added thing on her plate, when really none of that's added to her, that was added to you, and you're trying to navigate it. So are you doing okay, honey? Would have been a better response, right? Is there anything we can do? And a lot of times, we don't really come up with something we can do. It's more of like, no, I can't think of anything. I just needed to be able to say that to somebody and just know that I'm okay. Sometimes that's all it is, that we just need that, or can I come over and we just talk, or, and they just get a big hug and you bake a pie together or do something different. But it's one of those things that if that person feels like they now have to control everything you're going through and they're going through, and they already feel exasperated, they'll correct you in that way. Because that was a correction without being a correction. That was like, you should actually be sharing more positive things. Get your life together so that when you call me, you've got something good to say. See, that's a correction. So that's a problem. Somebody else got one?
So this is interesting. I think it's more like it's a correction, but it makes no sense. And the only way I can say it is an example. It would be more like a sarcastic correction that I never did. If that makes sense. So this is an example. I'm 10 years old. We're downtown, and a car drives by with its window completely blown out and broken, and it was like covered in tarp. And a relative of mine was like, "Abby, why would you do that? You're not supposed to do that." And it was like a sarcastic correction of a joke, but I'm 10. And I took it very literal. And then there's more examples, but that just somehow kept happening over and over again with different people in my life where I'm like, I didn't even do that.
Yeah.
And it was just like, wait, like, you know what I mean? It was like, whoa. And it's not even really a correction, but like, it wasn't.
Right, so they're like teasing you in a correction way. So the brain took that in as like, I didn't blow the window out of that car. I didn't throw this down the stairs. I didn't spill the pop or whatever it is. Yeah, that's gotta mess with you. So subconsciously, have you ever looked at something that was broken or done whatever and then double checked yourself to make sure you didn't have any part of it?
So many. I mean, even just in like being in the situation I was in where it was just like, no, I'm telling the truth. And it's like, no, you're not. You don't remember right. And it's like, wait a second. Yes, I do. And then you're
Yeah.
convinced. And then you get basically convinced that you have a bad memory. And that's something that I still have to deal with where I'm like, no, I saw that right. I remember that right. And it's something that I still have to learn.
So the first time you were told you had a bad memory, when you know for a fact you remember that you didn't participate in whatever it was, you might have got mad. But now, do you go from 1 to 10 in a heartbeat?
No, I'm a lot more relaxed, mostly
Okay.
because now I'm like, well, I know the truth, and I know that I actually didn't do that, or I know what I saw, and that person doesn't define whether it happened or not. And that's just like the reality of it.
Right.
And I had to kind of, right, it's finding your identity not in the person, right, not bonding to them, and just being like, actually, you don't define that,
Yeah.
and kind of.
So can you hear that she has different instruction about that correction? So sometimes that's what we have to do, and even to get over trauma bonding, you have to have a different instruction that goes in. So many times we'll say that out loud because the old instruction, the training is in there, and it is instructing you what to do or how to think in that situation. So you say out loud, no, that person does not have a right to, right? And you have to give it a reality check that, no, we're actually going with these instructions. That one over there was in a different language. This is the instructions of how to put this thing together. And so then you can double correct that in the sense of like, now I'm going to say what's right. So one more. What's a correction that you remember that's like, yeah, that went down crossways?
I wasn't allowed to show my feelings, so my dad would always say, if you don't stop crying, I'll give you something to cry about. And then my mom.
Anybody else?
Yeah.
That was a famous one. I don't know who came up with it, but it was famous.
And then my mom would always say, when I would like her story, whenever I would call her in a crisis, she would say, "Why do you think I should drop everything for you whenever you're in a crisis?" Well, because you're my mom. Like, who else would I go to? So stuff like that, I wasn't allowed
Yeah.
to like show feelings. I guess that would be a type of correction.
Yeah, so if you felt like, if someone uses the word correction, then that might be a trigger for you to already be like, yep, they don't care about me. Yeah, when it could be completely opposite. So this is why it's really important to understand. Now, we can read a scripture that says, he who learns from instruction and correction is on the right path of life, and the others, it'll be an example to others, for wisdom. And it's like, wow, yeah, that's really awesome. I should do that. Except for we have all of these different things that go off on the inside of us that can trigger a thought pattern, and we'll react to it a way that maybe we shouldn't. And it comes out of that deep-seated area. So instruction is the dialogue that brings understanding. The Bible, Proverbs says to get wisdom, right? And it'll say get knowledge, get understanding, treat it like gold or silver. So it's really important because you can have knowledge and just know all kinds of facts. You ever meet somebody who's just really good at trivia, but they have a hard time tying their own shoes? But they just know these weird, like, did you know Chinese blah, blah, blah in 1914 had, you're like, okay, no, I didn't know that. That's not an everyday thought. But they have a hard time processing just everyday thoughts. And so there's something to how the brain functions to cross over to have more than just knowledge. Emotional intelligence, for instance, comes from having the knowledge of the other person and yourself and being self-aware, and then understanding what to do next, or what the cues, the social cues. So it's really important to not just have the knowledge, but to have the understanding. And then when you have the understanding, wisdom comes and sits right on that. And you see wisely, you see what it was, what it is, and where we're going. That all happens just, it should happen subconsciously. But if we didn't get the memo when we were growing up, that makes it really hard. So overcorrection or correction without instruction causes damage in the brain that when you go to try to process or learn now, it will be more difficult for you till you retrain the brain. So an example of that is where perfectionism comes from. So to like things nice, does that mean you're a perfectionist? No. To be able to have something organized, does that mean you're a perfectionist? No, it's really the attitude of the heart and the energy of what's going on inside of you. If I don't put the screwdriver back in the right spot, I'm gonna have a meltdown. Okay, now you're moving over into perfectionism. If I'm not doing this by a certain time, if someone sees that the screwdriver is over where the wrench was supposed to be, that's gonna be so embarrassing. Now we're moving into perfectionism. To have it lined up so it's organized is not perfectionism. But a person who is struggling with organizing something may think that you're a perfectionist just because your tools are lined up nice. So, we're very busy people, and so sometimes things look really organized. It is our heart to have them organized, and sometimes we got areas that are like, that laundry room has gone awry. We better get at that. Just because you have to pick and choose what's the priority of the day. But, Germans are teased about having to have everything just so. There's other nationalities, for some reason, it's just so. And we had a guy, my husband was working on something, and this guy comes into his shed, and he goes, well, this is the German place. It's very obvious. You have to have everything just so. Well, if he doesn't have things put away, then it's going to take us twice as long to find the thing that you need. It just creates a whole thing. It isn't about perfectionism. It's about organization. You had something, Shelley?
Yeah, I just wanted to add that there's some things that you can become perfectionistic about that are hidden, other people don't see it.
Yeah.
It's not about other people seeing it, it's more of an internal thing. Like, I can remember being really poor, so things revolved around money. So now I find myself being perfectionistic about how I do my bookkeeping and how I do my taxes and how I organize my money and how I go through my day. And it can be abusive because if there's not enough, it's me who will go help.
Yeah. Yeah. But is it great to have things organized? Yes. There is a great feeling to be able to say, I just line that checkbook up and I got this, whatever. You walk out the door and you're like, that's power. Because it just feels good. It feels like, now I know what I'm doing. But if you do it with perfectionism attached to it, here's the thing with perfectionism. It will produce something that might be good, but to the average person looking in, or to the functionality of something. But if emotionally you're getting some kind of benefit from it, that's why you're doing the perfectionism. And this is what I mean by that. This is where it can go awry. It's like, I am so glad I cleaned the living room because I don't want to get yelled at tonight. See, there's the buy-off, the payoff of training that says, if I get it right, then I'm protecting myself from these 25 things. So I always have to get it right so that I'm protected. Instead of like, no, I just like the powerful feeling of knowing that I know where my checkbook is. I know what numbers we got, how much I'm going to spend on groceries, whatever, it's figured out. And now I actually don't have to think about it because I did that job and I can move on and it's no big deal. But it looks real organized, you know. And but perfectionism at its finest, when it comes over to interrupt instruction and correction, is when the payoff, like I can't let go of this order inside of me because then I won't stay ahead of the negative thing that could happen to me. See, now we're organizing things and doing things for the wrong reason. And there's a fear and anxiety attached to it. Like, I don't want to get yelled at. I always got in trouble for this when I was growing up. I always had there'll be those kinds of things that'll be in the back. And so it's a high priority and everyone needs to understand that this is how we do this, right? You got to keep that car clean. Instead of just being like, I like my car clean. But if it's not, I'll be okay. Like, ain't nobody going to die. This isn't about world peace. This is just my car, right? So, but there's a sensation that will actually get stuck in the body when the instruction and the correction is trained in such a way that causes you to doubt who you are as a person. You know, like what Abby was saying, like, did you break that window or whatever? It's causing you to start going, I have to keep it together. I could be the fault of things. So I have to make sure I stay on all top of this, right? So where we feel insecure, we will have to have control. To the level of your insecurity is the level you'll need control. Go ahead.
I found like with my recovery or whatever that I'm like super perfection, like it's almost like a fear of losing control. It maybe just doesn't relate like back to my childhood, but there's like certain areas in my life now where I was so out of control in my addiction that now things have to be like.
So this is what happens with the brain. With addiction, with meth, cocaine, acid, I mean, you name it, porn can do this. It's like it fragments your ability to stay less is more. I'm on this subject right now. I started the sentence. I will finish it, and I'll put a period at the end of it, or an exclamation point. I started this project over here. I finished it, right? So it'll feel like you're here, you're there, you're here, you're there. You got to do this telephone call. Suddenly you'll be like, I didn't get anything done. I don't know what I'm doing. Why did I lose that job? It's all over the place. So now you take the drugs, the porn, the whatever away, and your pathways are like this. So how are you going to get them reined back in unless you pull it in and make it less is more, right? Unless you retrain the brain to finish the sentence. Finish a project. Ladies or men, if you're cleaning the house and you've gone through something like this, you're like, yeah, we better get this house clean. And you go over here and you move a candle. And you go over here and wipe a spot. And then where's the vacuum cleaner? It's not productive. It's fragmented thinking. It's like you're everywhere all at the same time, starting something but never finishing it. And then it'll last maybe 15, 20 minutes and you feel exasperated. Because your brain can't finish any math problem that you're producing. Rather than saying, I'm going to clean this table off right here. That's all I have the time to do. That's what I'm doing. I'm cleaning the table off right now. You walk by and you're like, sweet looking table. Right? But I'll tell you what, when you first start doing that, and correct me if I'm wrong, there's this thing where it's like, I want to move from the table to go over there. Let's tear the fish tank apart and clean that. You know, there's this like, and then you'll just stand there and what people will go is like, this is stupid. And they'll leave and go get high. Because it meets those ports that happen in the brain. So I am going to find this movie and we'll be playing it here in maybe during the trauma bonding, but also in some other classes, It's just a video clip, maybe lasts like 3 minutes, of the receptors in your brain in a U-shaped form. And on the inside of it, you will see the chemicals that protect the receptors, because your receptors are like live wires and they get hot. So you have to have that extra coating, the serotonin, all the fun stuff that's in there. You use heroin goes in there and strips that. So there's nothing protecting the wires, right? But as long as heroin is in there, it's distracting to the brain. It's like telling the brain what to do. It literally will tell the brain, this is what we're doing right now. So you say, we'll take the heroin away. Now there's nothing in the receptor. That's why many times you put methadone, right? Go to the methadone clinics or different things like this. What that does is it mocks it, goes in there, and still there's nothing there to support that. So you have to put something there to support that. You remove that, now you have live wires, and now try to control the fragmented thinking. Very, very difficult. You'll start a job, not finish it. It's all over. It's hard to finish a load of laundry, things like that. So bringing yourself to like, I'm not leaving. No, we're not walking to the park till I fold this batch. You're such a perfectionist. No, I'm trying to actually finish a sentence here. Right? And then the healthier you get, you will realize I can actually start this and finish it, go over here, start this and finish it, and stick to something. So you have that, but then when it crosses over to like, this is the feeling you'll have to watch for. If I don't organize and clean my room, and if I don't have my bed made this morning, I'm probably going back to using. Like I have to make sure, we got to get there 5 minutes early, and then it'll be 10 minutes early to whatever appointment or whatever. I have to know, did you bring the paperwork? Do we have the stuff? Is there enough gas in the car? It starts to ramp up another way that basically says, I don't want to go back to using. I don't want to. And so people will say, I've always had high anxiety, that's why I used. Well, some of that is that you used and now you have high anxiety. And it doesn't just go away. And for some people, without the supernatural touch from God, the brain receptors always have to have that medication. Without a supernatural touch from God. And that fragmentation can ramp up so hard. Like say you're controlling it. You can tell that you're like high anxiety, but you stay more by yourself and you work in an office cubicle and don't really want people talking to you. But suddenly the company goes under, your dog dies, the rent all of a sudden went up $300 where you live and everything. And now this circumstance has now hit where it's requiring more of your brain, more of the serotonin, more of the feel good. It's burning up anything that's left. Well, you already have empty receptors. That's going to be high anxiety. People hallucinate when that happens. They'll do things like, I know the government's watching me. Well, we all know that. That is actually real. I always witness to them. I'm like, hey, by the way, you need to be born again. Got a smart TV. People can tap into that. They can hear about it. Just need, you need to be born again, and so I let them know that. But anyways, it'll be more of a paranoia that you're being followed. It can be that for some people, it's so intense that they can't sleep because their receptors are doing this. And then days will go by, and then they get manic, and paranoia becomes greater, and it keeps producing, right? Other thing that can happen is you've never had bipolar before, you get a bipolar diagnosis. Well, why? Because those receptors are empty. And so I'm not saying get heavily on medications. I'm saying be aware that you're actually going through something 2, 3, 4, 5 years after this. Right? It doesn't just be like, like a lot of people who go, I've been a month free of such and such. And you're like, well, good, that's awesome. That'll save your life. But to have absolute healing is going to take a lot longer than that. Yeah, that too. But when a receptor's been damaged, you can't cast out mental illness. You can heal it through the power of God, nutrition, and those types of things, but you can't cast that out. You can cast out a demon. That's what casting out stuff is for, demons. right? That makes sense? But you can't cast out mental illness. People try it all the time. Somebody's in a fetal position. They come, in the name of Jesus. Okay, well, there might be something playing around there, but even if there was and that thing left, you still need healing in the brain, in the body, in the receptors, in that whole area. Can't, see? So there's a balance in that. And if we understand even just, like for instance, caffeine dries out the brain. Nicotine dries out the brain. It causes your, your veins to atrophy or to become smaller or tighter, and now you're not getting the oxygen to your brain the way that it should. There's all kinds of different things like that. So if you're not eating healthy and you don't get the omega-3 fatty acids or any of the fats that are supposed to go to your brain, you can also become manic, right? Is that a demon? No, that's your physical body's not getting what it needs. If I came with a bee sucking machine and just sucked B12 out of you and B6 out of you, you'd instantly go out of your mind. So I could come up and cast whatever demon that I think is there, but you need B6 and B12, and you better get you some, right? So sometimes B12, they'll give you a shot right in the arm. People who have gone through meth or heroin, it just sucks that right out. And the B vitamins are not vitamins that, like, I built that up, so I don't have to take that for a while. No, you burn up your regular Bs every day. So if now you're depleted and you took just enough to barely get up to the line where you're supposed to be at, right, and you skip a day, you're going to feel it. So you got to feed this dirt and water the right way too. So instruction is really good. Correction is best if you give it to yourself up front, right? Have you ever been in the habit of correcting yourself? It's like, nope, that is not what you're supposed to be doing right now.
Working on it.
Yeah. And so then there has to be a trust that you're actually going to follow what you said and not follow the body or follow, thought patterns that think they're greater than what you just said. Right? So we grow into that. We'll grow into that. And that's that navigator that's there. So instruction and correction is huge. But if you're raised traumatized or trauma bonded or fearful, perfectionism can come out of the instruction, and the fear of correction can be right behind it. Like, we best get this right. So why is it when I walk into a place and there's toys laying around and stuff like that, I can walk in, I don't care if it's Mission 61, I don't care if, somebody invites me over to the home or whatever. Women, we apologize right away.
Right, yeah.
Because you have a child playing with toys right now. And so I'm supposed to think bad of that? Like, you're going to come in, sometimes people have twins or whatever. Or just a live wire child. I had 2 of them. And we had 12 kids for a long time because we did foster care for many years. And then I did preschool and daycare. And some of that was done at the same time. Yeah, there was lots of kids in the house or whatever. So if you came over to my house, people say, it's just so peaceful and relaxing in here. Why? Because it was spotless? No, it wasn't spotless. It looked like we lived there. And I didn't feel the need to have to explain myself. This truck wasn't, just a minute, I'll be right with you. I have to clean no. Now, if I got maggots crawling up the walls and spaghettis all over the floor or something, maybe I should rethink how I'm taking care of these kids. But it'll be an instant thing where you're not relaxed in your own skin. And actually, some people will describe it like, especially stay-home moms, where it's like they're trying to do the homeschooling or whatever it is they're doing, and they've got things that they would like to put just in order and have just right. And so they fear the mailman coming, or UPS, somebody that might step in the house that you have to sign something for, the neighbor rang the doorbell. Do we answer that? Do we pull the shades because we don't want coming in here and seeing this bunch of toys laying around or whatever? Well, there's a limit. You got to keep your house enough, right? But you do actually live there. Wow. So A real perfectionist that's afraid of overstimulation and all that kind of stuff probably wouldn't like my office. Now, I have 3 offices. The office I'm talking about is the office in my home. I probably have a gazillion books in it. You know, people come in and they'll be like, did you actually read all these? And I'm like, it's my goal. I'm after the study of the, it looks like, you know, kind of like a mad scientist would be in there. But, you know, my daughters come in and took pictures of me and then showed it to her friends. I don't know, she lets me know this later, but I'll have a baseball cap on backwards, you know, hair sticking out the side. My glasses are down like this, and I'm like, you know, paper stacks are here because I'm creating something. That's how I roll. Right? But I also like that if I'm counseling, like right now we're doing construction and stuff, and I keep trying to pull the stuff out of the office up here so that it's less is more. That's different. Because if I'm counseling you, I don't want you thinking about a stack of paper over here and, you know, eventually I'm going to get it down to maybe a pen sitting on the table and just nothing in the room really, but chairs and a desk. Because you need to be able to not have to concentrate on all that. But you're not in my office at home, right? My husband's got an office in the modular, and he's got a lot of books and things like that. He's got a computer area. He's got another area where he does computer stuff. Then there's taxes are here, and he collects stuff, and he's got that laying. And then he's got a whole nother table a perfectionist would not like it. But he probably runs and has run like 13 to 15 checkbooks between businesses and all the church things or whatever, right? Now we have an accountant we get a lot of that over to, but who did that to begin with? We did. So how is that always going to look perfect without us going crazy? There has to be a little bit of compromise and movement where you get to it, clean it up. Then you're over here and you're working in this, clean it up. And you come back over, see what I'm saying? But if we had to just be like, Abby's coming to the office today and we didn't clean that up over there. I got to get down there because I don't want Abby thinking bad of me. Now perfectionism is to prevent you from getting hurt. It's not about organization. I actually find that people, you know, as long as I don't have that degree where it's like a hoarding haven or something like that. It's just, you know, average clean house. We actually live here. There's a spoon in the sink. Oh, Lord forbid. You know, whatever. That people feel more relaxed. Because if I have to have everything perfect, you know I expect that of you. It's a subconscious feeling. You'll be like, I don't want her to see what my... So a lot of times when I come over and there'll be stuff laying or the laundry's being folded on the couches, how many you do the laundry on the couch or the kitchen table or something like that? You put another load in or whatever. Somehow that's shameful. Where did that teaching come from? I don't know. It's a fear. It's a fear. So we have to find where's the middle of the road where we're actually taking care of things nicely and for the right reason. It's not so the neighbor thinks a certain way about or my Aunt Sarah won't get mad at me or whatever it is. Those are things now that's not the right kind of correction and instruction. It's attached to something that's off. What do you say? So, you can test people in offices. All you have to do is move their stapler. Now, of course, if they move their stapler back because that's what makes them the most efficient, then don't mess with their stapler because that's how they're going to be really efficient when they're using it like that. But if it's like, don't do that, don't move that. Okay, now we have obsessive compulsive stuff. And that's like you're watching so that you don't get that. But you're trying to find your new normal. See, fragmented thinking was the normal when you're using. That's just normal. You're just all over the place. That's how a lot of times people will go, do you think they're using? I'm like, yeah. You can't walk through their room. The sink is piled up with dishes. Their notes are laying all over. I mean, it's like, this ain't making sense. You think they really are? Yeah. I don't need to smell something on someone's breath or like, you know. There's a point where you just like lose it, and now we're in fragmented thinking. Start something and not finish it. I showed up at a lady's house a couple years ago, and everyone was questioning whether or not she was using. And I'm like, I don't have to do a drug test. I don't have to do none of that. I can just look at how things, they don't make sense. They don't make sense how your cupboard is. It doesn't make sense how you parked your car. Things are like not making sense in a lot of areas. And a real high-functioning alcoholic can make it look really good. But we can't always control all that because our brain will fragment out like that. So how many of you identify with what she was talking about if you've ever come off of something or detoxed or whatever and you knew you were bouncing all over and then suddenly it was like it settled in, but then you had a fear that the control I've now gained, I could lose this at any time. I don't want to go back to, I can't do that. And it'll actually cause you to clean more, organize more. Get rid of things, can't own anything. So sometimes a part of using is hoarding. Because the brain has to be able to sort. The brain has to go, okay, I know I don't actually need this, and this is too small for me, right? And this is la, la, la. The longer you're sober, all of a sudden it can actually flip because you start to feel like I'm actually controlling something that's going on. This feels really good. And it can actually start going over to a ditch where it's like, I'm down to 1 pair of pants and 2 shirts. Because that I know I can control. Well, you might have to bring it down that far, control, but then allow yourself to add back on. But that's a pendulum swing. Like you're accumulating all this stuff, and then all of a sudden, everything's got to go. Can't own anything. Nope, that's just, it makes me feel dirty. I can't. That's all part of the brain healing. Amen? Amen. Just giving you a reality check. And just think, people that have never used in their life suffer some of this. They suffer the fragmented thinking. I can say they never use, but they might drink 5 cups of coffee a day, and their brain is not getting the oxygen it needs from the receptors overfiring, and then the blood vessels becoming small and constricted. You could become very fragmented in that. Or it'll hype up your perfectionism. Because now it's firing so fast. Now I really got to get up at 4. We got to get this place clean. We got to organize and that's when you spit shine your kids before they go to school. Get it's like, okay, all right, maybe that's a little way overdone. But behind it, when it's very, when it enters an inappropriate area, is when your instruction and the fear of being corrected or rejected in correction, right? So like what your mom said to you was a rejected correction. Like, I'm going to give you a negative feedback and push you away until you change this behavior. I'm correcting you. Yeah? Rather than saying, I don't care if you had a poor behavior or not, I love you, honey. What is it that you need? Right. Now, when you're using and you burn bridges and you do all that, it isn't like parents, a healthy parent's going to be like, I will give you whatever you need, honey. Take my wallet and my credit. They're not, no. They're going to be like, no, you got yourself into this, and there are some things you got to do to get yourself out of this, but I love you, and I will be with you all the way. That's different than I should come running on everything. I'm not going to come running on everything, right? So reading this once again, he who learns from instruction and correction is on the right path of life. And others that will be watching, that'll be an example of the path toward wisdom and blessing. But he who ignores and refuses correction goes off course. You go off course. And for others, his example is a path towards sin and toward ruin. You're actually ruining something. So think about what correction may look like and who you submit yourself to be corrected. Would I continue to look for correction from your mother? No. But then you can rebel against that. Doesn't matter what age. You can be like, you know what? I ain't doing that, old lady. And rebel, right? And really what you're saying then at that point is, I don't need correction at all. Is that true? No, we still need to be corrected. It's just an unhealthy person is not the person you should be getting your correction from. Amen? And so, and it shouldn't be the person that you get your instruction from. So that's why the Bible is the highest level of the best correction. Proverbs, if you want to know how to live everyday life, you read Proverbs. It's a wisdom book, and it will correct some things in your life. It'll show you how things should operate. At the same time, if you are doing things and have a rote and have a certain thing, and behind it is only the benefit of getting out of rejection, being shunned, being looked down on, or whatever, and that's why you have perfectionism. Like I said, it's different than being organized and clean. That's there for a wrong reason. Something in the correction and the instruction that you received bonded into you, and now the perfectionism is, I have to do this. You don't have to do anything. You'll know if you have perfectionism, if you know there's like 2 plates in the sink and you're trying to go to bed. And it's like that story with the pee under the mattress. The little person can't sleep because the whole bed's uncomfortable now because there's some perfectionism there. Being organized so that you can be more productive would, if you just get up and, no, I'm going to do that so I don't have to do that in the morning. Yeah. That's relaxed, right? Right? I just don't have to do that later. I'm not really caring what any of you think. I'm caring about how I'm navigating my day to be the most productive. But if there's a voice of instruction and correction that it's like, ooh, my mother wouldn't approve of this. My grandma would be so upset. And everyone's going to know I'm a slob now. Because how many of us got corrected like that? This is a pigsty, you slob. You know, all of that type of stuff. That's poor instruction and poor correction. And perfectionism will come out of that. And the reason we do it is we're trying to prevent the negative from happening. So you don't really get a good benefit of productivity out of that. To reorganize some things because you can see, hey, it actually works better if I do that. If I get up just 15 minutes earlier, I can feel more relaxed. I don't have adrenaline bursts to get to work. I got to make sure I could actually have time to make my bed if I just 15 minutes earlier. That's not a perfectionist thing. That's just being productive. So I want you to kind of think about that. And this is what the Lord wanted me bringing up tonight because we also have to understand like what we were talking about. As soon as the drug leaves the brain, soon as the porn leaves the brain, soon as the gambling leaves the brain, I'm talking about the stimulation from it, all that live wire that's fragmented has to figure out how to have closure. A lot of times if there's no closure all day, you don't sleep at night. Or you'll go into such a deep sleep, drool's coming out your mouth or whatever, and you'll sleep till noon the next day. Because your subconscious is trying so hard to solve something, the rest of it's like, shut up, I'm not doing anything. So it's really healthy to incrementalize how you approach something or what you're going to do and take it in increments. And it doesn't have to be all perfect. It's just you want it to be more productive. Right? If you clean your garage, you can park the car in it. No way. But do I have to take a toothbrush to the floor? No. Because I don't care what you think. This garage is where my car is. I park here. Right? So I care what I think about my garage. That's hard to do, isn't it? If you're not self-aware, you don't love yourself. Then it goes, there's something wrong with me because I'm always getting corrected. So I have to trust that everyone else out there knows everything about me. And I will just adjust myself to what they think. Well, nobody thinks the same thing in this room. How are you going to do that dance? You might be fine with something, you're not. Right? So It has to be like, here's where I live, this is my dwelling place, this job I'm doing, there's certain rules and regs, and I need to have some understanding of that, but I'm going to do life in a productive way, not in a perfectionist way, where I'm actually saying, I fear people, I fear man. Yeah? I fear what other people think. I fear abuse. And that's what's causing us to overdo some of that stuff. So I actually had a lady not long ago say she couldn't come to an event because she had such anxiety about her house. She hadn't vacuumed in like 3 days.
Oh, no.
She's a single woman. What's going on in there that's really made this such a mess that you can't come to an event? Or vacuum it before the event. There's an idea. Oh my gosh. Or vacuum it when you get out. Oh my. But they're literally, the anxiety was through the roof, that they're very homebound and they're bound to this pattern. That's perfectionism. Because you break the pattern of that, you're going to be in trouble. Something bad's coming. Something's going to make you feel ashamed. Somebody's going to say something. Okay, now we're in an unhealthy spot. Amen? So if you approach addiction with a perfectionistic attitude, think about it. I mean, if I say I'm not going to be in perfectionism when it comes to using meth, so, well now, okay, I need some structure. Otherwise, I'll just go use it because I'm not being perfect about this. So I'll use every other day instead of whenever I feel like it, because I'm not really driven. Okay, no, that's not what I'm talking about. But there is something that there is a fear where you don't trust yourself. That if you don't lay the law down for yourself and be hard on yourself, you're going to go use. How many of you used anyway?
I used a couple of them.
Right. Because you're already scared of how big of a boundary you had for yourself, and you know you can't produce that. So you're like, yeah, that was stupid, but I'm going to go use now because I can't pull that off. Where there's something about allowing the brain realize it's going to fragment, and that's where retraining it is moment by moment. That's why they're not like, make a plan for the rest of your life to never use. That's too big. Because the brain's been like this on heroin, And so now we're trying to pull those receptors in, and now you're making a plan for this afternoon, how you're going to stay sober. Sometimes it starts out as, how am I going to stay sober in this moment? You're conquering it in the moment. Next thing is 10 minutes. Next thing, I got through the day. Next thing is like, I counted a day. Shoot, I'm at 30 days. But you don't want to get too cocky, because 30 days, that's a big deal, but how many people go and use again at 30 days? And there's something about the 30, 60, 90 that's so healthy to know, okay, we got there. But there's something about those numbers that can mess with your head. Right? First number that messes with you is, I have to make it through a day. Then you do, and you're like, I'm one day without it. This is crazy. Then the next one, usually people will jump to 7 days, which is a week. And that's just like, anything can happen at this point. I mean, this could be really real, and I could go on to day 8, 9, 10, 11. I don't know. So it gets edgy. But there's something about the 30-day thing that many times there's something in that where perfectionism through impure correction and instruction will already start thinking about using before the number 30. Why is that? Because one person can say, I'm 30 days free, not have it. I mean, they just keep going, 31, 32. Another person it'll be like they're starting to get anxious by day 25. They're coming up on, because I don't know if I'm going to make that 30 mark. And then when you do, it's like this big crescendo, and then sometimes people will just fall off of that and go use. Because they made that their marker of perfectionism. I read it, instead of I'm still taking one day at a time. And then if you get to 90 days and you use, what does everybody say if you use at that point? I'm talking about to themselves. I'm such a loser. because it took so much to get to that point. You turn on yourself. And then if you're not careful, your own correcting yourself inappropriately will prevent you from getting back up and doing that 90 days again and going on from there. Yeah, because you beat yourself up. And sometimes we beat ourselves up because we feel disappointed, but really if you dig deep, you feel disappointed that everyone feels disappointed about you. Same thing happens with weight loss. You're like, well, I'm not going there anymore. I can't work out. I can't whatever. People will do that. Why? Because they have that inherent inappropriate correction built inside of them that says, if you don't always get it right, then this is what you deserve. This is what's coming for you. All the past corrections that were inappropriate, all the feelings like your mom gave you, those types of things are coming for you. You didn't stay perfect like you should have. You could have prevented those feelings. You could have. Is that how to do that? It's a trap. When I can feel negative, anytime I think about negative things, I could be 5 years free, and if I think about something negative, there's a negative feeling that goes with it. And I might cry, whatever, and I'm okay. I don't have to be perfect. I don't have to always be on the sunny side of life. But what I am doing is trying to take the moment and stay free. Take the moment and stay free. A person who comes in and judges your house, your car, something like that, by something over here was your cupboard was out of order or whatever, they don't know what victory it took you to get your bathroom cleaned this morning, especially with a kid, or 2 or 3 or 4. There's a victory in that. And so to have someone pick out something or shame you or give you this certain feeling or look because you didn't conquer all areas, come on now, you know your victories. And don't let them take that from you. Feels good that you cleaned out the kitchen cupboards. Good, feel good about that. You can get through the rest of the dishes later. It's not an absolute fail. But if your brain sets up like it has to all be, and I have to always, then the first thing that goes awry gives you the excuse to go use because it's like, see, I can't control this. Do you need to control it all? Well, if I don't control it all, then I think already I'm going to use. Because that's what I was like when I used. I couldn't control anything. Amen? So it's a mind game. It's a mind game. And a person who's never used, they don't get it. Just saying. Sometimes people call them the normies, right? They don't know because they don't know what it's like to have taken the brain to such a point where it's like this, and then for you to have the conquering ability to make your own bed is really kind of victory. It's wonderful. This is why I don't like also in a lot of the sober homes that I've traveled to or spoken at or different places like that, if they just let the house go awry, it causes the brain to go back into that thing. It's not good. But if everything has to be perfect, it causes the poor training to come up and lets you know you're going to fail. And I'm not talking about the house is clean. I'm talking about the correction in the person's head. You have to be able to get at your own thoughts and be like, no, today I'm just going to sit here and breathe. I'll get to that box. I'll do that tomorrow. This is the day that I'm just going to do this. I'm going to go for a long walk, and I'm going to, because you know what you need to get that taken care of. But isn't it a good feeling? How many of you say it's a good feeling to come into a place where it's just well organized? You just feel relaxed. You feel like, I don't think I would want to be in a doctor's office that looked like a hoarder's haven, where he's like, just a minute, I think I have an instrument, it's somewhere, and they're like pulling papers off, and they're trying to, you're like, I don't think I want you touching me. I mean, that would be the, I mean, there's a good feeling because it erases the noise in your head, the clutter. It causes a calming and a peace unless you have that thing that says, yes, if this is interrupted at any time, I will lose it because then I know I'm going to go use. You don't have to have everything perfect. And you can still stay sober. Yeah? But notice when everything starts just going sloppy. Notice that. Because you might be about to do something. See, it's spectrums. Yeah? All right. Well, let's stand. Have you ever gone to someone else's house and helped them make wood or do their dishes or something and it felt so good? Now go home and do your own house. I don't want to, that's so dumb. Like, I don't. Have you ever asked that question? Like, I know parents do. They're like, you know, the neighbor will be like, and she came over, did all of our dishes. She's so sweet. I bet you just love her at home, you know. And then you're like, she never does anything around here. You know what I mean? She gets corrected for it or whatever. Because there is something about coming away from your own space and into someone else's space, helping them, that gives you this feeling of like, I actually can do this. Yep. Right? Because your emotional state is not connected to all of their stuff. Right? It's not your yard, not your wood. You're just coming alongside of your friend and helping. But when you go back to do something for yourself, everything you touch, everything that's in your surroundings of your house says something to you. So when I'm there and you'll be like, oh, sorry about the house, it ain't speaking to me. I don't got a problem. I'm here to see you. Right? I'm not looking at your house. I don't care about that. But there'll be this feeling of like, I don't know if I can throw that out because I don't know if I never finished that. All of that is speaking to you. So you have to be able to just go in sections at a time and say, well, I'm going to tell you what we're going to think about that. Right? But if you know that you can go to someone else's and it's so peaceful to help them out, it isn't a cleaning issue. It isn't. It's an emotional issue of everything that's attached to what you own. The memories in those rooms. The memories with the clothes you wear. Sometimes you got to get rid of your party clothes. I'm just saying. Because you go in there, oh, that's that shirt I always wear when I go. Get rid of it. Change it up. Make a different emotional feeling in that closet. By like, I got this new. I make some memories in this that are healthy. Because here's the thing, you'll avoid that shirt you partied in until you're contemplating doing something. Then you'll go toward like, where is that outfit? Yeah? Just give me a little instruction on some things to think it through. Coming to the church and serving and helping, shoveling snow for your neighbor, doing that kind of stuff, you should go practice having those good feelings. But then take that good feeling knowing, see, I can do this, and I am good at it or whatever, and start ruling your own household, your space, all right? Father, we just come before you. We thank you for everybody that's here, and we ask for strength to come in their bodies and their minds and a settling, Lord, and we just speak healing over our brains right now. That all the hot live receptors that are still there, that are speaking loudly to our situations and being over emotional in our head, Lord, we just ask right now for healing power. Move on the situation. Move on the brain, Lord God. Cause us to think differently and be more at peace. Not perfectionists, but productive. In Jesus' name, amen. I love all of you. Saturday night, we are back on.